Welcome to episode 73 of The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. Today, we're going to talk about the future of food and consider surprising ways in which shopping, cooking, and eating will change over the next decade. But first, let's meet our panelists. Jennifer Bryman is president and co-founder of Heart Creative, a culinary marketing agency. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Gen Z.
Rowan Jacobsen is renowned for his long-form journalism and books covering a panoply of forward-looking topics in the food industry. So good to have you here.
Thanks, Catherine.
And Fernando Divina is back with us. Fernando is a James Beard Award-winning cookbook author and also the president, creative director, and executive chef at Basics Markets here in Oregon. Good to see you again.
You as well.
Well, let's get started, folks, with our first topic, the new era of foraged foods. Rowan Jacobsen, you're here in town for the Oregon Truffle Festival. And I feel like I've noticed in recent years in the food media that foraging wild foods is a very popular topic that's really trending, and I'm seeing it more in restaurants and even in stores. And I'm wondering, are you seeing that there's a foraging resurgence going on right now?
I think for sure. Although I don't know if is resurgence the right. It's a resurgence from like 5,000 years ago or something, right? But yeah, for sure. I think it's getting very popular, both on the restaurant end with restaurants serving wild foods, but also you're seeing more and more people actually going out to forage on their own, which I think is pretty interesting.
What are some examples that you've seen?
Mushrooms are an obvious one. Here in the Pacific Northwest, of course, you all have had a mushroom culture going back for a really long time. But now you're seeing there's kind of been this explosion of interest in wild ramps, I'm noticing, which I think is kind of an interesting barometer. All these communities that really didn't have a foraging tradition.
And ramps are?
They're like these wild onions, wild leeks, they're sometimes called. And they grow really all over the country, and they're found in spring in the woods. And now there's ramp festivals in several places in the country. And then, of course, the other big one is truffles. And really, the Pacific Northwest is driving that foraging trend. And it's partly because they've finally discovered truffle dogs out here, which I think is an interesting part of that whole trend.
Discovered truffle dogs? You mean who sniff out the truffles?
Yeah, so the truffles have always been here, but in Europe, truffles have always been harvested by dogs because the truffles are underground and they're really smelly, but people can't find them on their own because they're underground, but dogs can tell exactly where they are. And so in Europe, what they've always done is train dogs to find them, and then the dogs go through the woods, touch the spot where the truffle is or scratch it with their paw, and then they dig them up. We never knew about that here. So the only truffles that were harvested were done by raking. Like people would go into the forest, usually mushroom people, and would rake the woods, like the first few inches of dirt to get all the truffles. But that really disturbs the whole community, the microbial community in the soil. And it takes a lot of time. If you've got a dog, you go to the exact spots where the truffles are and dig them up. And in the past maybe 5 years or so, there's been this explosion of interest in truffle dogs in the Pacific Northwest. So you've got more and more people going out with their dogs and finding these truffles.
How interesting. Fernando, I know you wrote a book, a James Beard Award-winning cookbook, actually, called Foods of the Americas, Native Recipes and Traditions. I'm assuming there was a fair amount of foraged ingredients in that book?
Sure. Yeah. The truffle phenomenon, as you mentioned, 500 years ago, and certainly long before that, the truffles have been available. I got involved with them with the Mycological Society here in Oregon when they were trying to inoculate back in the 80s. And I think you're right that the dog phenomenon is helping, but I think the big distinction with harvesting truffles with dogs in particular is you can train them to seek only the ripe truffles, where if you're raking them, you're going to, as you mentioned, disturb the environment, and then potentially harvest unripe truffles as a result. And that's my observation as a cook in the region, is that there's lots of folks that don't make those distinctions in their harvesting, which becomes problematic. So I know that I think you've this group, and I think I've read in some of your articles or related work that the conscientiousness of harvesting and the impact is is something that we want to encourage people to be knowledgeable about what they're doing. But as far as foraging, I think the Northwest is the Cub Scouts and brownies is kind of a cultural thing. You grow up eating blackberries, and if you're on the coast, all kinds of seaweeds and sea vegetables and marsh type foods, and if you're, it's just a natural thing to study and to eat those kinds of things. You grow up with those things here in the Northwest. I think that responsibly used harvested products for personal consumption is really great. On a commercial level, I'm not so much sure about that. And I'm encouraged to read about invasive species that are being identified and sort of encouraged today. It seems like it's a very modern thing to do to eat chickweed and maybe go out and harvest on the coastline some of the invasive seaweeds that are showing up. Wakame, for example, it's always shown up on our coast, but it's really taking over right now.
Wakame is invasive around on this coast. That's
I believe you wrote an article about this, right, Rowan?
Yeah.
I wish wakame was invasive where I live. It's one of my favorites.
But I believe Rowan actually wrote an article for Outside Magazine about the invasivore movement. And actually, I've read, too, about chefs harvesting just weeds from the sidewalks in places like South Africa. I do like that idea of a foraging trend that actually isn't harming the environment, isn't taking anything away.
Right. You can definitely, if it's an invasive species, you can chomp away with a clean conscience for sure. But yeah, I think the whole foraging trend, it's partly, I think everybody has a desire to connect to the place where they live in as direct way as possible, and when it's through food, then that connection is immediate, and it just helps bring identity and purpose to the place where you live. And I think we all kind of hunger for that, especially more and more so as so many parts of the world get away from that.
Jen, I'd love to hear from you. You're kind of on the cutting edge of sort of what's next in food. Are you seeing forage products in the food marketplace?
I don't know that we see it as much in the marketplace in terms of the brands that we work with in the CPG space, but where I do see it and where I think it's important to talk about foraging is with young families and to share this knowledge with them. And to Fernando's point, to take your kids out in your neighborhood and you're going to find, blackberries, which is amazing. And it tastes so much better than just going to the store and picking them up. My daughter also went to a camp where they learned some foraging, and she had the opportunity to pick cattails from the swamp and open them up and eat from them. And she came home and told me about it, and that was something I'd never heard. So I also love the fact that, children can go out and have these experiences at different camps. And my son too, he had the lucky opportunity. I think it was about 2 Valentine's Days ago. He was at a friend's house, and the parents have this big, elaborate meal that they always make for Valentine's Day. And they were shaving truffles on their meal, and he happened to be there. And I'm going to talk about this when we talk about Gen Z, but they are so adventuresome when it comes to trying new things and new foods. And he was all in, and he was so excited to try truffles for the first time. So I think kids are open to trying new things. It's about exposing them to it, and I think that includes foraging as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that we're talking about the future of food and we're talking about foraging. I mean, it's something that's been done for thousands of years. And Fernando, you mentioned the Mycological Society, which is the Mushroomers Society. And I remember in the 70s and 80s, my parents were a part of that, and we would go mushroom hunting. And I just love that this has come back. So what does this say about the future? Does it make you hopeful, everyone?
Foraging in general, I think, is a healthy thing to do on an individual basis. Those are the things that you should eat on when the ramps or the nodding onions are around. You should eat those when they're the narrow window in which they're available. And I think it's very helpful to put context, add seasonal context.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's transition to our next topic, which is related to what Jen was just talking about, what Gen Z is eating. Jen Bryman, as co-founder and president of Heart Creative, you are on the front lines of what's new in food and how to market food to the next generation, and that next generation is Gen Z, who are ages 12 to 22 right now. Could you tell us about this next wave of consumers? How are they dining and buying, and in what ways are they different from previous generations in their consumption of food?
Yeah. I'll just start off by saying I love this generation. I have 2 kids in this generation, and they are just so entertaining, and the way they go about the world is different than previous generations. I'll start by saying that they now are the largest generation, outpacing millennials in terms of size. And when we talk about marketing, oftentimes people don't think about marketing to children, and there are young adults in this generation as well. But the reason why it's so important is not only just their size from a population perspective, but also it's estimated that they already have about $44 billion in buying power. And so the other important point, too, is their influence on people who are making purchasing decisions. So even if they don't have the dollars in hands, 87% of their parents say that their Gen Z children influence their purchasing decisions. And then when you take it another level, when it comes to buying a specific brand, those children also influence their parents in terms of particular brand. About 50% of parents say that that influences them. So they have a lot of buying power, is one thing to know about them. They're digital natives, meaning they were born essentially with smart devices in their hands. The average age that one of these Gen Z people gets a smartphone, the average age was about 10 and a half years old. So because they are so savvy in the digital space, that is a lot of where they do their discovery of new products and new brands, and that does include food brands and also just learning about restaurants and what products to try. So that's where they explore. That's where they discover new things, and they do have particular social channels that they like to go to discover new information. They are most frequently on YouTube. They're on Instagram. And then, of course, I have to mention TikTok, because that is a place where they like to spend a lot of their time. And it's a lot of fun. If you haven't been on there, it's just wildly entertaining if you like that sense of humor.
It's interesting. It seems like products are also becoming healthier, more organic. I feel like I'm seeing just healthier products out there. Is that something that Gen Z is?
It is something that they are looking for. So again, going back to our research we did recently, when we asked them, what makes a brand healthy, they aren't referencing like diets or specific things like specific type of ingredients, but what they're looking for on the label is natural ingredients that they can read and they can understand. So they're trying to avoid things that are additives, and so they are looking for that. One other thing that we've seen that's a trend with this generation is snacking. So this generation, because they are on the move, a large portion of them are in school, whether it be college or high school, and then some middle schoolers. They're looking for convenience. They're eating on the go. And it is something that they embrace rather than the traditional 3 square meals. What's interesting is while the number one thing that they cite as their snack preference is things like chips and crackers, and then the second was cookies. Surprisingly, the third one was fresh fruits and vegetables. And then the next one was sort of mini meals, meaning things like pita and hummus or boiled eggs, those types of things. So when you look at that number 3 and number 4, they definitely are interested in healthier options. So I think we're going to definitely see that as a trend. And I think it is because of what they're being exposed to in the household. Gen X parents and some of the older millennial parents, it's what they're feeding their children. They're giving them whole foods. They're exposing them to new foods. And then the final thing I'll say on that is that they are also the most ethnically diverse generation. And so I think that also is feeding into this adventuresome spirit of I want to try new foods. I want to try things that are internationally influenced, and also they're very open to trying new things like vegan or plant-based products and just things that they have never tried before. And they are also looking for a lot of plant-based options because a number of them cite in terms of things that are important to them when they go to buy food products. Things that they care about are sustainability and the environment. And then the second one is animal welfare. So they care.
Traceability in general, if they're not plant-based. I think one of the interesting phenomena about the plant-based movement is how much strength there is. It's jumping multiple percentages all the time. It's one of the fastest growing consumer areas.
Rowan, did you find Jen's message hopeful that the next generation is looking for sustainable foods?
Absolutely, and I have a Gen Z kid too, and I would totally agree with everything Jen said there. What I'm hearing is, and agreeing with, is that Gen Z is very interested in health and sustainability, but I wonder whether they're interested in doing their own cooking to get there. A lot of snacking. I have friends who have like food delivery companies, and what they tell me is that the trend is for more and more meal kits, ready-to-go things. And it strikes me, obviously, I think we all know that the healthiest way to eat is to cook for yourself. And sometimes I fear that that's one of those cultural traditions that if every generation doesn't train, the next one gets lost. So sometimes I worry that the Gen Zers are going to eat in a very healthy way, but they're not going to sort of take control of their own food prep.
One thing that we do know about this generation is that they're more... they don't have as strong a feeling about buying a particular brand if we're talking about food. However, they will be willing to pay more for a brand or a product if it aligns with their values, or if the company says, I'm going to give back to causes that support sustainability or environment. We also found that they would be willing to pay more for if it says it'll go back to help a cause like animal rights. So there are cases that they are willing to pay more. The other thing that they do care about as it relates to brands is that they are very much into legacy brands. Like one brand that pops up constantly when you talk about this is Oreo. That brand, for whatever reason, just sticks through each generation. And right now in particular, there's this really funny thing going on with Oreo, where a number of people on TikTok are doing this really weird thing of crushing up Oreos, stirring it with some milk, putting it in the microwave, and it turns into this Oreo cake. And so the reason why I bring that up is that...
See, they're cooking.
They're cooking in the microwave. And just put some fresh strawberries on top. It'll be fine. No, the reason why I bring it up, though, is that I think TikTok, it'll be interesting to see, where that goes in terms of a new marketing platform. Not a lot of brands have jumped onto it yet, but I think there's this open window and opportunity to engage that Gen Z audience and have them participate, because this generation, because they are so digital savvy, they want to be a part of the conversation, and they want to not just watch brands talk about themselves, and they don't just want to watch other influencers talk about things. They want to be a part of it. So they also are actively in store, doing reviews themselves and, picking up brands and having themselves be a part of that experience.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, sadly, I think we need to move on to our little break and thank our sponsor. Thank you to Outshinery, our generous sponsor for this episode. It's a very cool online service that creates better, faster, smarter images for the beverage industry. And I think every winemaker here in Oregon, where most of our wineries are small and family-run, needs to know Outshinery, because all you need to get top quality bottle images from Outshinery is your label art. That's right. If you need to have a bottle image for your website or for trade collateral or for the media, Outshinery will take your label design and create a beautiful picture-perfect image that looks like your actual bottle is a supermodel in an expensive photo shoot. In addition to bottle shots, Outshinery creates lifestyle images which feature any bottle in evocative seasonal settings. Collections are constantly updated and looks are made available on a limited basis. Outshinery has clients in 13 countries and 26 North American states and provinces. Outshinery is an online business that operates fast from first click to audience engagement in as little as 48 hours. The job is done on your timeline without the need to coordinate with external professionals. And I have to say, as an aside, I have actually used Outshinery for my own work, and it is awesome. You can just create a bottle image right away, and it's crisp and beautiful. So visit outshinery.com/free to try it for yourself and save 10% on your first purchase with the code FOURTOP. That's just spelled out FOURTOP. Thank you so much, Outshinery, and now back to the show. And so for our final course, we will discuss the new wave in grocery stores. Fernando Divina, you are president at Basics Market, a new style of grocery store that we've heard a little bit about. It's pretty different from what most Americans are familiar with. As far as I understand it, Basics Market brings nutritious organic foods directly from local farms into underserved communities and provides an education component as well. Is this part of a revolution going on in the grocery business?
No, some would argue that there's a big question mark over the model. We underserved communities may not be an inaccurate market strategy for us, but we do. We're in the Deacon neighborhood, which is in Northeast Portland, and it's an underserved neighborhood. Our main objective is to bring the most nutritious food from the vicinity to market, so that the money that you're spending is going to return the highest nutritive value per dollar. So I've been, in and around the Northwest my entire life. I'm 63. The fellow that I work with, Chuck, he's been around. He's been around here as long as I have been with Nature's and others. He's an accountant, a businessman, and a food scientist. And he developed this vertical system to produce one of the first organic foods company that in the country, and was very successful. Called Pacific Foods, and now we've taken that infrastructure and changed it, transformed that into value-added products. So we're making ultra-filtered high-protein milk, and of course milk products, but the milk industry as a whole is a questionable industry, and that's where we're coming in. And instead of leaving acres and acres of fallow land, our goal is to be carbon neutral through our system, through choosing varieties of feed that are deep-rooted, using low-till methods, and to use.
So you're farming your own grocery products.
We're not entirely. We can't. Our goal is to have all of our products produced in some form, and then we also reach out and support many others here in the valley. We don't aspire to be the biggest or national or international in terms of our scope. We just want to support our community here, and I think if we can prove that that's a profitable, or at least a sustainable model, then that's really our goal. And so we think, our small footprint, 5,000 square feet. Our biggest store is about 12,000 feet. We have classrooms, and we have nutritionists and culinary mentors that are available on hand, teaching classes that are all free. And we're integrated with virtually every healthcare community in our state. We're doing a couple of things to sort of prove out or disprove the notion that if you have really fresh, plucked from the ground product and you're eating it within hours, that's actually a good thing. We have a formal study being conducted with OHSU and our researcher, and then we're working with Providence on a breast cancer study with this high-protein ultra-filtered milk. We're sort of being where we are at this point in time. There's so much farming culture and structure and economy that we're trying to sort of tail out, so to speak, and introduce. We talked about the plant-based efforts that we're working towards. We're trying to sort of balance it all, bring in, facilitate the actual if there is a responsible way to raise animals and food and conduct commerce, then that's what we're attempting to do.
Jen, are you seeing business models like this?
I have not seen business models like this yet come, to our organization. Although I will say there is one organization that we do work for that's on the East Coast called Blue Marble Brands, and they do a lot of working with farmers in that region to help support the work that they're doing to try to get that more integrated into their products directly as well.
Fernando, did you say that you're trying to disprove the notion that plants straight out of the ground are more nutritious, or prove?
Well, we hope to prove it.
Okay.
And it's a popular theory. Everybody, in the healthcare community, everyone is poised to and believes that preventive care is really the answer for the future. Mm-hmm. But nobody's really able to sort of put it into place. And I was on Chuck's board at Pacific Foods for about 6 years prior to that, and it became apparent that the entire healthcare community really in that time period was just poised to sort of leap towards preventive care, but then we had a change in administration and funding changed, and that went away. So we're kind of filling the gap. We're providing the science and the forum an opportunity to interact with to do the studies and to have the marketplace to provide the products, and then in working with the scientific community, then we're able to tackle that and see if we can come up and we can actually prove that it's true, that it is healthful to eat freshly, regionally clean label foods, regional clean label foods that are relatively quick to the market. Then we can go to the insurance companies and say, I think we've got something here, and start prescribing. We're actually negotiating and working through the food pharmacy here in Oregon. I know there's a few here around in the country, but this would be the first in Oregon.
And is this a model that you think can work anywhere in the country, or is it specifically sort of designed to play?
I think so. The idea is that we're either going to prove or disprove it, and if we can come forward with it, there's a good chance that we can, and that if we can come forward with that, then there's something for everyone to take as a preventive step to the insurance company to bridge the preventive health care effort.
Wow, bravo for doing that, although it kind of seems so obvious that fresh local food is better for you.
It does.
It is. I think, and you touched on this, we were involved a number of years ago in participating, which you may have participated in this, Fernando, which is Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, at the Culinary Institute of America, where they're trying to bring together people from the food world and chefs and doctors and people in the healthcare world to start having these conversations. And, the number one thing you hear in terms of a roadblock is, how do you get insurance companies to pay for, one, having these types of preventative conversations, and then number two, making sure that the people who need it most can actually access and pay for the food that we know is going to make them healthier and prevent them from getting sick in the first place. So big challenges, and I would love and would be excited to see this happen.
But that's the thing, is I actually think the insurance companies are the key to the whole thing. If they're on their game, then they should realize that, like, just from our risk assessment is what they do basically, that it's worth it for them to invest in. So that's starting to happen in the the marine conservation world right now, where you're actually seeing reinsurance companies channel money toward things like coral reefs, because it's just bang for the buck. The cheapest way for them to prevent damage to infrastructure on shore from storms is by investing in things like coral reefs. And you might see something similar in the health food realm, where once their models are good enough, they realize that even though it's a long-term goal, they actually are going to save money by investing in healthy food.
Yeah, that would be great.
Are you saying capitalism is going to save the world?
I hate to sound like venture capitalist.
Well, I'm sorry to say, I think it's time to wrap up. So I guess it's time for our dessert course, where we go around the table and each share something that's food or beverage related that we've been enjoying this week. Rowan, do you want to share your dessert?
So I arrived in town like at midnight last night after some epic plane misadventures. But my host, Kate Mathers, immediately poured for me a glass of Quince Pomo by Wildcraft Cidery in Eugene. And it was just spectacularly good. And everything I've had from Wildcraft ciders is just out of this world. I make my own cider in the East Coast, and it's the best cider I've found in the country, probably. But the Pomo, in particular, as a dessert drink, amazing.
Yum. That sounds good at midnight. Thank you.
Made my day slightly better than it had been up to that point.
How about you, Jen?
So mine are not literal foods and desserts, but one thing I was excited to see this week is that UTSA, the University of Texas at San Antonio, they are digitizing a large collection of Mexican cookbooks. So they have a collection of over 2,000 cookbooks. And so far, they have digitized and translated about 100 of them so far. And you can go online and you can access them, which is really exciting. And then I have to have a second one because we're talking about Gen Z. Our creative director exposed me to this amazing young woman named Graceland, and she has the most hilarious little cooking show snippets on TikTok called Baking with Bob Segthick. And she is just the funniest, quirkiest girl. And it's junk food for your brain. But she actually cooks real food. She bakes. But her commentary is just amazing.
Well,
Hilarious.
we'll have to throw those links up on our social media feed.
She's hilarious.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. How about you, Fernando?
Well, I've been drinking. I've been trying to build my gut and do the right thing. And we are fermenting pretty much everything and teaching fermenting naturally in our markets. But we just came out with ginger beer. Sam, one of our culinary mentors, has been sort of spouting about with his ginger beer through the months, and so we just bottled it and decided to sell it. And his daughters designed the label. We're having in March 5th, we'll have several other flavors coming out, flavored ginger beer. So that's I've been drinking that lately.
That sounds wonderful. Well, I have to do a little log rolling for my dessert item. First of all, anyone interested in learning more about the future of groceries might want to check back and listen to episode 20 of The Four Top. We had Michael Ruhlman, author of Grocery, The Buying and Selling of Food in America, on that episode. And then looking back at our last episode, I wanted to follow up if anyone was interested in what Sophia Torres McKay was talking about. She co-founded an organization called Ahí Voy that empowers vineyard laborers to get educations and build better lives for themselves and their families. And if you weren't able to find information about Ahí Voy, it's because they didn't have a website yet. But actually, my colleague, Jan Kraus at Vin Agency, donated them a website, and I just wanted to let everyone know you can find it. If it's not up right away, it'll be up soon at ahivoy.org, and that's AHIVOY.org. And that's it. So a special thanks to our amazing panelists today, Fernando Divina, James Beard Award-winning cookbook author and president, creative director, and executive chef at Basics Market here in Oregon. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Jen Bryman, president and co-founder of Heart Creative, a culinary marketing agency. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Rowan Jacobsen, also a James Beard Award winner, twice, right?
Yeah.
And author of 7 books, is that right?
Yeah.
Also a journalist covering sustainability, the food industry, and more for national publications such as Outside Magazine. Thanks for being here.
It was fun. Thanks.
After that late flight. Today's episode of The Four Top was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the studios of OPB. Izzy Kramer is our tireless and multi-talented producer. Keelan King is our editor, and he also composed and performed our theme music. Nalene Silva was our audio tech today. Special thanks to the web staff at OPB who bring our show to life on the Oregon Public Broadcasting website, as well as to sound supervisor Stephen Cray. You can check out our dedicated website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, donate to the show, and reach out to us on social media. And if you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes, NPR One, or Spotify, please help us out and do so and leave us a rating. I'm your host, Catherine Cole, and I'm going to go drink some cider right now, I think. Bye-bye.